we're returning to the Dvar Malchut that we learned. And the Dvar Malchut we learned is a speech given by Lubavitcher Rebbe in 1991, and it's talking about the miracle of two big miracles that happened on Gimel Tammuz, the third day of Tammuz, which that's going to be next, with I guess this Motzi Shabbat it's going to be. So one big miracle that happened in our time was that the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe was miraculously released from prison. He was in communist prison. He was sentenced to death, and miraculously he was not. This is 1927. He was not killed, which is totally, unexplainable. In Stalin's Russia, that people went into prison and they weren't killed makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. It's like taking a person and drowning him in the ocean, putting him in the ocean for like a day, for a week, and coming out all of a sudden okay. Just how did you breathe? I don't know. At least maybe it must have affected your brain some way, something like that. No, then what about all the sharks down there? Putting the Rebbe into a Stalin prison, and he was there for like 2 weeks, and he came out. I mean, they tortured him, they beat him up, but he came out alive. It was just totally, above all the laws of nature. That anyone could come out of Stalin's prison. Stalin killed tens of millions of people. That was a pretty big miracle. And there was another big miracle that happened over 3,000 years earlier, and that was that Joshua, when he came to conquer the land of Israel, he was fighting his enemies, and the sun stood still so that he could finish the battle. Sun stood still in the heavens. So there's one opinion that not only did the sun stand still, but all of the constellations stood still. In other words, the whole world, all nature was affected by this miracle. And the Rebbe also brought up the third miracle, but that didn't happen in Gimel Tammuz, and that's the staff of Aaron. And for the staff of Aaron, the Rebbe here wants to prove that when God does miracles, he tries to do the miracles in as natural a way as possible, to show that nature itself is a big miracle. It says that's the point of the difference between Korach and Chukat next week. Korach, the difference, they both have the letters Kof, Kuf, and Chet. But the difference with Korach has a Resh, and Chukat has a Tuf. And the letter Tuf is exactly the same shape as a Resh. It just has a line that comes down. And that's the whole purpose of Judaism, to make godliness come down into the world. And Korach didn't want godliness in the world. He wanted the spiritual to be spiritual and the physical to be physical. There should be priests and regular people, and they shouldn't have any mix between them. That's what Korach wanted. He wanted everything to be frozen. And Judaism, at least the Judaism of Moses, is that the whole world is holy, and you have to bring godliness into every detail of the world. Every detail of the world. So that was the purpose of these. That was the reason that God made these miracles in a gradual way. The third day of Tammuz, Rebbe just got out of prison, and then it had to wait another 10 days, whatever, for him to actually get out of exile. He was put into exile, and then he had to wait like another year or whatever for him to actually get out of Russia, and then he had to wait another 10 years for him to get out of, to come to America. So it was a gradual process. The same thing with Joshua. Joshua fought this battle. The sun stood still, but still he had to fight the battle. He had to continue the battle on his own. God didn't finish it off for him. He had to do it. So it had to be done in a natural way. Okay. According to this, now we can understand the miracle of Shemesh beGivon Dom, that the sun stood still in Givon. It says it was silent because every star and every planet has its song. It says its song. You want to call it its vibration, and that's what makes it move. This, by the way, is the source of the idea that the sun goes around the earth. The sun goes around the earth. So because the sun stood still. Sun stood still. Okay, if you say that the whole world, all of the stars and the whole whatever is, the whole constellations and everything, all the heavens all stood still. So maybe it's not such a good source that the sun stood still, because everything stood still. So you could say, well, the earth just stood still, and it just seemed that the sun stood still. Okay, there's a place for this in Judaism. You can explain it either way. It doesn't make any difference. But here it says that the sun stood still. What does it mean the sun stood still? The sun was quiet. It stood still. The purpose of this miracle with Joshua was not to leave nature totally, but like the majority of things, that the miracle would just help the victory in the war. Shekashura gam derech hateva, that the war was in a way of nature. And this is a big thing in Judaism. Everything has to be nature. Same thing with forgiveness of sins. If a person did sins, then the rabbis can help, and the tzaddikim can help, and Moshiach will help, but you have to do the work yourself. You have to do the work yourself. You have to repent. You have to change your mind. You have to make resolution for the future. You have to change all your priorities in life. You have to do it on your own. It can't be a person who's going to come and say, you are forgiven. Right? There's no such thing. A person, in order to achieve anything, it has to be done on his own. There are miracles. I mean, there are certain miracles where you're just impossible. Like I said, the man didn't have any a big growth or something like that. And the doctor said you have to operate, and the Rebbe gave a blessing, and the growth disappeared. Okay, a person can't do that on his own. There are certain things, but generally speaking, serving God, you have to do it on your own. Okay, so things have to be done in a natural way. Even in this war, that God will fight for the Jewish people, it was necessary to be in a natural way. Therefore, therefore, the miracle of the sun standing still did not make the war stand still. It didn't negate the battle that he had to fight. He had to fight a battle. Joshua had to fight with a sword, with a gun, stick people, kill people. It just helped the war. It just helped his victory. He had to fight the battle. But the sun standing still, this helped it. The same thing as God helps us. Melech Ozer, he helps us. The preparation for the miracle, for the victory, was by means of the miracle of the sun standing still. I mean, you can ask yourself a question. What do you mean we have to do it all on our own? God took us out of Egypt. We could have never gotten out of Egypt. God did the whole thing. Right? Did the whole thing. So there's two answers to that. Number one, he didn't exactly do the whole thing. We had to walk out of Egypt. We had to leave. And there, in fact, where it says there was 4/5 of the Jews that didn't want to leave. They remained in Egypt. They died in the plague of darkness, it says. So we had to leave. Number two, when things are done that way, right? God did that. True. It's like a person being born. When you're born, you're not doing anything. You're just born. But after that, you have to live your life. You can't be attached to your mother the rest of your life, right? You have to do things on your own. Maybe the first few weeks, you're helpless. But after that, even when the baby comes out, he cries. He's demanding something. He's doing something. He's demanding. It says the same thing is over here. That God helps you. You have to do it. You have to do things on your own. So it says, God just made the sun stand still, but Joshua had to do it on his own. But that did not bring the victory. After the light shined and the natural, the sunlight, then Joshua, and it lasted for 24 hours, so it didn't set. Then Joshua and the Jewish people had to run, pursue, and to fight with their enemy in a natural way. According to this, Ulai, maybe we can more logically saying that the miracle that the sun stood still was in a way that's attached to the nature of just the sun. And just the sun. Or maybe we can say, no, it didn't just stop the sun and the moon, but it stopped everything. The whole sun, this whole zodiac, and the stars, and the constellations, everything. And the whole entire heaven stopped. And everything which is connected to, anything connected in any way to the sun. The Yumtak al Piyabir Chasidus, and this is explained according to Chasidut. What Joshua said, Shemesh begivon dam v'yoreach ba'emak ayalon. It said that the sun stood still and Givon, and the moon stood still. She'al yedei atzirut malach hashemesh, that by means that the sun and the moon stopped, What does it mean it stopped? It says, why does the sun and the moon, why do they move around? It's because they're bowing down to God's presence. It says God's presence, they receive God's. This is the effect of the sun dome. It remains silent from singing its song, from its, how do you say, its vibrations, the sun. This Ratzah Yeshua, therefore Joshua wanted to negate the sun's effect, its power to the non-Jews. Now the non-Jews worship the sun. The Jewish people, they go more according to the moon. And the non-Jews, they're according to the sun. The sun, the non-Jews, they serve the sun and the moon also. The sun and the moon. It says that now the Jewish people, they go just according to the moon, but they don't worship the moon. It says the non-Jews, they go according to the sun, and they also worship the sun. Sun worshippers. There was especially Baal. There was this thing. There was Baal Peor. There was Baal. This is the way I understand it. Baal was sun worship. And if you think about it, it makes sort of more sense to worship the sun than it does to worship God. I mean, you see the sun, and you see that when the sun sets, it's scary, right? If there's no lights of that, when the electric lights? When did they started illuminating the streets? When, I don't know, 100 years ago, 150 or 200 years ago. So when they started illuminating the streets, before that, the world existed for according to science, the world existed like 54 trillion years, something, without light. How did they do it? Right? And they used to this. You see that when the sun sets, it's not good, and when the sun rises, it's wonderful. And not only that the sun provides not just warmth, it provides nourishment for plants. It provides so many good things. The sun, he has healing powers. So why not worship the sun? Right? The sun is really worthy of worship. On the other hand, you don't see God doing anything. Where is God? You don't see him creating us. You don't see him giving us life. You don't see him rising in the morning, going to bed at night. Right? God doing us a favor. God shining his face on us. We don't see it. Right? You have to extrapolate. You have to think. Like Avram, once again, maybe the sun is a creator. Maybe someone is creating the sun. Maybe the goodness of the sun comes from an infinite goodness. This is a little bit difficult, right? It's not logical also. And worship the sun. The sun is directly giving me a favor. So it says, therefore, the non-Jews, that they're more connected to the creation, they worship the sun. And therefore, by stopping the sun, it was showing that there's a power higher than the sun that's creating the sun. By means of this also helped Joshua to win the war. It took away the power of the enemies, of the Gentiles. According to this, it's more logical to say that by means of the sun standing still in Givon, they stopped all, not just the sun and the moon, and all of the whole entire heavens. They all stopped. Why? Because all of nature stopped. Joshua was basically fighting a war, if you want to call it, against the negative aspects of nature. Negative aspects. He didn't want the sun to be destroyed or all of nature to be destroyed, and then the evil people go to hell and he'll go to heaven. He wanted this physical world, that all the good in the physical world should be brought out. But in order to do that, he had to show at least for a while, that there's a boss to this world. The same thing is also the miracle of the third day of Tammuz in 1927. Together with this, there was the miracle of the third day of Tammuz, was also the miracle. This is also a miracle which is above nature. And this affected nature itself. Shehu iskim lanes, that the communists actually agreed to the miracle. And especially this is a miracle which was in nature from the beginning. This is, if you compare the miracle that the previous Rebbe got out of prison to the miracle of the staff of Aaron and the sun standing still, those were real miracles. That was real miracles. But for a person to get out of prison wasn't such a big miracle. I mean, he was in prison. He was out of prison in the beginning, and he was out of prison in the beginning. Prison was not his place. He was put into prison, so he got out. Such a big miracle. But you had to look closely to see, right? The sun standing still, that was a big miracle. The staff of Aaron growing almonds, that was also a big miracle. There's no doubt about it. The Rebbe going out on the face of it wasn't such a big miracle, but when you look and you understand what was going on, how much the communists wanted to kill the Rebbe, how much they wanted to kill in general, just to kill people was nothing to them, and how the Rebbe managed to get out, right? But it wasn't just that the Rebbe got out, that those same people that imprisoned the Rebbe, Haim Gufa, they were the ones that had to release him. They even had to help him to get out of prison. And they had to help him in the end. The Russians in the end, it says they released the Rebbe. They even released his books. He had a huge library. They had to release the books as well. He said, I'm not going to leave it unless you let my library go. There was like thousands of books, crates and crates of books. And they said, okay, just get out of here. They helped him to leave. When the Rebbe went to Poland, he went to the Yesh Loma, we can say, Shaloch, and therefore the miracle did not come at once, but it came little by little. It came commensurate to the opposition. Because of them, their nature, that their nature would agree to release the Rebbe. It wasn't that all of a sudden God made a miracle and a big hole appeared in the wall, or the Rebbe just flew out through the bars or something like that and he released them. It could be. God could do anything, right? He took the Jews out of Egypt and with all sorts of miracles. He could have done the same thing here. He says, no, that's not what he wanted to do. God didn't want it to be. He wanted that the communists themselves should agree to release him, that they should participate. First of all, they had to rescind their decree of the punishment of death. And then they said they were going to send him to the city of Kostromar. And then they said for 10 years. And then they said no, for 3 years. And finally, he was only there for like a little more than a week. And they let him go totally. But even afterwards, when he remained in Russia, it was still, the communism was still, and the hatred was still powerful. Especially the Hitnagdut Ladat Yisrael, and it was still against Judaism. And therefore, therefore, the Jewish people, it took a long time, 70 years, right? 70 years. Communism started around 1920, and it ended around 1990. That's when the Iron Curtain fell. And the Rebbe wants to say that the reason that the Iron Curtain fell was begun by the previous Rebbe's self-sacrifice. The Russians themselves, in the course of 70 years, they came sof in the end to the decision sheyatchilu misham harshot bnei Israel, that the Jewish people will be able to be free as far as Judaism goes. The Jews can leave if they want to. Russia, unheard of. They actually heard. I mean, I think you know this, but in Moscow, the Chabad Center is a huge synagogue. It's a huge center, civic center. It's like 5 stories high, and it's opposite on the other side of the street is the KGB offices. This includes also right now the whole idea of the Rebbe said nowadays the city, one of the main cities, it used to be the capital, was called Petrograd. And then they changed it. The communists changed it to Leningrad. In Leningrad, that's where the jail was. Yeshiva, the Beit Yisrael. That was the Sperlenka prison. That's where everybody went in and they didn't come out. That was the prison. That was in Leningrad, not far from the Rebbe's house. It wasn't for Rebbe's house. They changed it to Leningrad. Now, Lenin, anybody knows a little bit of history, Lenin was a murderer, a disgusting, merciless, evil person. Lenin. He killed millions. He didn't manage to kill as many people as Stalin did. They say that Stalin killed Lenin in order to get into this. But he was just a terrible, low, disgusting. I mean, according to all measures, I don't know why they left his body over there in Red Square, but they did. I guess he was not as obviously bad as Stalin was. But so the city was called Leningrad. They changed it from Leningrad. Now, Peterburg was, as far as I know, was called on the name of one of the czars, Peter, but it was also called on this religious figure, Peter, right? He's one of the saints of the whatever it is. So, in other words, it's connected to somehow or other to religion, to God, connected to God. So, Peterburg, that was the original name, and they changed it to Leningrad, and that's where the Rebbe was imprisoned. And after the Rebbe got out, 70 years later, they changed it back to the name of Peterburg. That was the name of the time when the first Rebbe of Chabad was in prison. The name of that was the enemy of the Jews in the time of the building of the city. Peter was called on the name of Peter. He was the Peter Paul Fortress. I was there. I don't know if it's the same building as it was back, but I was there also. That it symbolizes the opposite of the communist thing, because originally Peter was a religious name, and the communists hated all the religions. And they changed it back to Peterburg. That's the way it is now. Even though that under the Tsar, it was also terrible for the Jews. The Ein Zemagia was nowhere, it was incomparably better than it was in the time of the communists. The communists were infinitely worse than the Tsar. They were terrible. The Yeshlomo, we can say, the debates that they're having to change the city from Leningrad to Peterburg, we can see revealed even more the effect of the previous Rebbe's release in 1927 on the 12th and the 13th of Tammuz. This is the redemption, total redemption from all of the enemies of Judaism, and especially in that country of Russia. Russia was the country that was constantly bad for the Jews. It was never good for the Jews in Russia, never, ever. There was not one day that was good for the Jews in Russia. There was always decrees hanging over their heads. The government was trying everything they could to change Judaism, right? They wanted, in the time of the Tsar, they wanted all the Jews to convert. So they did. In the time of communism, they just wanted to destroy Judaism, and basically they succeeded. In order to remain a religious Jew in Tsarist Russia, you had to have determination, but they more or less left you alone, especially the older people. In communist Russia, in order to remain the religious Jew, you had to have self-sacrifice. You couldn't just remain, and you say, bastion yourself in your house. It was almost impossible to remain a religious Jew. So it says, maybe we can attach this all with the month of the future redemption. That's going to be the month of Tammuz. I guess we can do, let's do a little bit of this. Here we go. Also this month of Tammuz. And this is the fourth month. This is going to be tomorrow. Tomorrow is the first day of Tammuz. Today is already Rosh Chodesh Tammuz. And that it came after the third month of the year, which is the month of Sivan. The Sivan is the third month of the year. That's the letter Gimel. And the fourth month of the year is the letter Dalet. This is the initials of Gomel Dalim, giving to the poor. Giving to the poor. The third month of the year, that's the month we receive the Torah. That's rich. The month of Tammuz is poor. That's the month where the Rebbe. Okay, we'll see. Hashpa Gomel. This is the third month, which is the month where the Torah was given, into the fourth month, which this is the month when the sixth Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, was in prison. That's poverty. In a way that this transformed Gomel Dalin. It was the third month gives to the fourth month, that the fourth month also becomes rich. It becomes a month of redemption. We can see that maybe this is also hinted at the letter Dalid. Even though the letter Dalid and the letter Resh, they show that both of them are an inyan of poverty. The word Dalit and the word Resh both imply poverty. Dalit means dalut, and dalim, poor people. And the Resh is Rash. Rash also means poor. A Rash ain't call. It's a sentence in what is in the Mishle, right? What's in Shmuel? How could it be? Okay, and it's that's right. Also Mishle, right? Also in Mishle, also. But it says in Samuel. It's written in Samuel. Okay. Well, it says a Rash ain't call. Where is this? Where do we get this? What happened? Going down. A Rash ain't call. That's right. The poor person has nothing, and both of them have have two lines. A Reish and a Dalet have two lines. Reish and a Dalet. One is above Barochav, like this, a Dalet, and one goes down. Reish and a Dalet, both the same thing. But there's a difference between them. The letter Dalet, it has a little point in the back of it here. See, we're here. It has a little Yud. And the letter Reish is rounded off, so it's lacking that point that comes out. One of the things in this is a little point. That's the difference between Dalet and Reish. The little point, this indicates a type of a person that he is willing to surrender to something higher than himself. This refers to Judaism. The point of Judaism that there is complete by every single Jew. Even when a Jew is found in a situation of what's called backside, far away from Judaism. Like the rabbis say, even though he sins, he's still a Jew. Simple language, God always loves the Jews and loves every Jew. And there's some pretty bad Jews. I mean, the ones that put the previous Rebbe into prison, they were Jews. They were Jews. They were communist Jews, but they were since the Nekudat Yadut, the point of Judaism is above all of the worlds. It's above all levels. It's above the whole entire chain of creation. It's a little point which connects the Jew. That's the little point in the back of the Dalet with Yachid Shalomai, with God. There's something inside of a Jew that a Jew can't deny. That's his true identity. It's something he's never identified, could be he's never identified before in his life, and suddenly feels that's who he really is. His money and his success and his past and his future and his actions and his deeds and his thoughts, that's not really him. The essence of a Jew is something that's so incredibly real, it's connected to the essence of creation. This point, the little point in the back of the Dalet, this shows that the poverty of the fourth month really indicates a total surrender to godliness. It comes to the highest levels. Dalet is from the lesson of dilitoni. Dilitoni means elevate me, rise me up. Like it says, the mile of the prayer of a poor person, tefillah la'ani, this reaches, it says, right before God, which is not the case, the letter Reish. The letter Reish also looks very similar, but the letter Reish, that indicates it doesn't have this surrender. The poverty of the word Reish, is deeper. Its poverty is that it's lacking anything spiritual. It has no connection to godliness. So it could be the Rosh is as rich as Nebuchadnezzar. He's got as much power, he rules the whole world, but he's poor. He has nothing. It says that's the difference between these 2 months. We're going to have to stop here. That's what difference between these 2 months. The month of Gimel, it gives something to Dalet. Dalet, what does it give? It gives this surrender to God. Shnei Kavim, both of them have Reish and Dalet, both have 2 lines, one horizontal, one vertical. This includes all of the levels of creation. And generally it means up and down and right and left. One is above, the one on the top is wide, long, and the one on the side goes down. But Darga Elyona, but the highest level itself, on the top of it, it's the long one. This indicates on finally being drawn down into this physical world. What are you going to draw down to the physical world? It has to be the level of this little yud that's in the back. The little yud shows that I'm advertising in the world that there's God. That's my thing. There's a creator. I'm surrendering to the creator. That's the letter Dalid. And the Rebbe is going to say that's this fourth month. That fourth month, that's Dalid. It shows humility and connection to the creator of the universe to be brought down. That's the long leg of the letter Dalid. To be brought down into this physical world. And this will continue doing tomorrow. Just have to remember where we are. We're just 91 tomorrow. That's the whole idea of the previous Rebbe. Sitting in prison to bring godliness into the lowest of lowest places by being surrendered to God. That, by the way, if you read the book of Psalms, you can even read it in English. You see that that's King David. That's the thing of Moshiach. King David just suffered his whole life, and he just believed in God his whole life. He was bringing godliness, the essence of God, into the lowest of lowest places. And that's what Moshiach will do. And that's what the previous Rebbe did. That's the whole miracle of going out of Egypt and the Rebbe's going out of prison in Gimel Tammuz. Okay, now let us do the Yom